some of this in the media, who would prefer to define this as a partisan issue. I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed by the way the committee takes this up. So, we do not view this as a partisan issue. We view the administration as our partner in getting this system back in order. Thank you to my co-chair.
Thank you, Chairman Strauss. And with that, I want to welcome, great to have you before us this morning, this afternoon, Governor, and look forward to your comments. And I know you have some of your administrative team with you, so welcome to the committee. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me just start by saying thank you to Chairman Strauss, the members of the committee, for giving us this opportunity to testify today. Better? Testifying today on behalf of House 3347, an act for reliable, sustainable Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority. We all know it's quite a winter, and we all learned a lot. I learned, for example, that the weight of a cubic foot of dry snow is 7 pounds, and the weight of a cubic foot of wet snow is 21 pounds. And if you want to know how to shovel it off a pitched roof, I can tell you that. And if you want to know how to shovel it off a flat roof, I can help you with that too. We also learned that a successful, operating, performing MBTA is critical to the Commonwealth. It is a major part of our circulatory system. It pumps life throughout our neighborhoods, our cities, and our towns. It carries us back and forth to work, to school, to the hospital, to healthcare facilities, to our parks, to our restaurants and theaters, and to our main streets and shopping areas and our places of faith. I echo the Chair's comments with respect to the importance of the T to more than half the communities of Massachusetts. It's one of the things that helps support the vibrancy of Greater Boston, and as I said, over half the communities in the Commonwealth. In short, it needs to be well-managed, well-operated, well-maintained, and willing and able to learn from others and from its own mistakes. This past winter, I think most people would say the MBTA failed a major stress test. But this was not the result of a single incident, but a long time and worsening set of chronic conditions. In fact, the shutting down of the core T transit system and the commuter rail was the medical equivalent of a trip to the ICU. Today, the T is mostly back on its feet, but the chronic conditions that put it in the ICU still remain. And while we are all hopeful that things will improve, without intense rehabilitation and a new way of thinking, things will probably not. And why should they? It's an old maxim that if nothing changes, then nothing will change. And it's as simple as that. As you all know, I convened a special panel Mayor Sullivan from Braintree was a member of to do an emergency diagnostic. In 35 days, this group of experts in management and transportation reviewed all past reports, met with dozens of interested parties, including unions, former general managers, Mayor Walsh, other local officials, and regional and local employers, and toured 4 MBTA facilities. Their diagnosis was clear. The T is in severe financial distress and would be insolvent without significant and continually increasing funding from the Commonwealth each year. This diagnosis, by the way, is consistent with the one issued recently by the Massachusetts Taxpayers Foundation. And while this finding in particular is from the advisory panel's report, it could have been written from a variety of reports that have been issued about the T's financial condition, dating all the way back to the Senate Ways and Means Chair Pat McGovern's Budget Buster report in 1988, which was almost 30 years ago. Going forward, if nothing changes, state support for the T, over and above the dedicated sales tax dollars the T already receives, is projected to go from $160 million in fiscal year 2012 to $520 million in fiscal year 2018, a 225% increase over 6 years. The T lacks a viable maintenance and repair plan for vehicles, facilities, signals, track and power systems, even though these are core responsibilities for the agency. And these issues have also been enumerated for years in a number of independent reports and studies. 3, the T lacks a metric dashboard, performance culture, whatever it is you want to call it, that gives management that provides management the information they need to hold themselves and others accountable for performance. The T's governance model was ineffective in part because the funding and financial responsibilities that pay for over half its operation are distant from decision makers and customers. The advisory panel's key findings covered 9 specific areas, from the unsustainable operating budget and chronic capital underinvestment to a lack of customer focus and a flawed contracting process. Its blueprint for action calls for swift and bold administrative and legislative action. The panel admits this plan of action will be difficult and require collective effort, but the alternative is far worse. Continued spiraling costs, unmet maintenance needs, and an increasingly unreliable MBTA. Let me make one thing clear here. We want to fix the T. I do not want to privatize the T. I do not want to slash services. I do not want to lay off hundreds of T employees. I do not want to drive people off the T by making fares unaffordable. What I do want to do is to give the people of Massachusetts, those who pay for the T and those who ride it, a reliable, predictable, affordable public transportation system. If nothing changes, history has already proven that none of those objectives will be achieved. We will do all that we can to address the management and administrative issues afflicting the T, and there are many. Massive underspending of the capital budget over the course of the past 5 years. Absenteeism that has caused the droppage of thousands of trips every month. But we will need your help to get us all from where we are today to where we need to go. The MBTA needs specific actions to address its most acute problems and strong ongoing rehabilitation. The bill before you provides the full set of tools and instructions we need to move the T forward. It creates a fiscal management control board for at least the next 3 years to deliver the kind of focus, urgency, and expertise that this situation requires. It includes procurement changes to tackle the chronic underspending with respect to capital and maintenance. It has a series of recommendations to increase own source revenue with respect to real estate, concessions, advertising. And it has a series of workplace change recommendations to ensure that the T is as productive and as performance-oriented and as accountable as it can be. And while last winter was indeed unique, the T's response to the challenge was unacceptable. Schools closed because of the T's unreliability. Workers, particularly our employees who depend on the T, lost income never to be regained. Hospitals and other healthcare providers had their staff staying on, sleeping in the building night after night, shift after shift, stretching themselves to the limit. And our economy lost billions of dollars in economic activity. Now I know this committee faces a large collection of issues, proposed legislation, and on this one alone, a wide variety of options and opinions. Let me close by saying what I said up front. If nothing changes, then nothing will change. Now is the time to make the necessary changes that are required to put the T, unimpeded, back on the right track. And we look forward to working with you and the other members of the legislature and the public to make this happen. Thanks very much for the opportunity to be here today. I look forward to question and answer and any follow-up, as I said to you before, that you're interested in pursuing. And I'd now like to turn this over to Chris Gabrieli, who served as one of the members of the Fiscal Control Board in Springfield and represents, as our chair of the Board of Higher Education, one of the primary consumers of transportation and e-services. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Governor. Right before you start, Chris, anybody that has a cell phone in here, could you please put it on vibrate or shut it off? We don't want the hearing interrupted, so if you could please do that. Check your cell phone, make sure that you're not going to interrupt the hearing as we move forward. Thank you, Governor. Chris?
Good afternoon. I'm honored to be invited to speak today, not as someone who's expert by any means on the T or transportation, but I do have significant experience in a turnaround situation, having been appointed by Governor Patrick to chair the Springfield Finance Control Board, initially placed by this legislature and Governor Romney. I'm also actively involved in turnaround efforts in Lawrence around schools and Springfield Environment Zone partnership. Frequent T rider living here in Boston, and as the governor mentioned, as Chair of the Board of Higher Ed represents a large class of users. Most of them are like a late night service, but that's probably not on topic here. All I want to say is that a control board can be an unqualified success, and I think that's the case in Springfield. I want to back up a step and say, in talking to my colleagues who worked with me there, get reminded of some of the specifics. There too, there was an accumulated, what I think can only be characterized as a failure of management. Financial management, similar situation. Operational management, it's not just a finance challenge in Springfield, it's a challenge around fundamental services. A managerial breakdown. Managerial quality within the ranks within Springfield was very problematic, and a strategic failure. I don't want to take you through all that, many of you may recall, but Springfield had not had a balanced budget in 18 years. They had previous financial crises in 1989, 91, 96. There was legislation passed repeatedly. I bring this all up to say these failures tend to accumulate over significant periods of time, as I believe they have here. The city faced a projected $20 million deficit for the fiscal year, and in fact, $41 million. I won't go on with some of the details except to say operationally there were similar issues. One school had 292 building code violations. In public works, 25% of all employees were being paid the wrong hourly rates. In the library, several departments had more than 40% sick leave usage deemed abusive. The happy outcome is that within 12 months, the budget crisis was over. That by the time we left, the city had a structurally balanced budget, more than $100 million in reserves. We were able to deposit $42 million into a trust fund that helps 800 students a year attend college who had no such prospect before. Along the way, while many sacrificed, it's also important to emphasize more policemen were hired for the first time in a decade, more firemen were hired, more teachers were in place, and so forth. So without going into detail on all of that, I can add one last point, which is I've had the good fortune to be invited back to Springfield to work on the schools. And I can tell you, I wasn't sure when I first got called whether as the former chair of the Finance Control Board I'd be welcomed or ridden out of town, in summary fashion. But in fact, welcome, because in Springfield, that control board era is seen as an era that really provided a great opportunity for the city to get back on its feet. And much of the same set of metrics, same set of systems, same financial tools are in place today. Let me close by making 2 points based on my experience there that I think are really important. One is, to do this well requires people pulling together. The opportunity for labor and management to come and address the challenges is high. Having said that, it is crucial to have decisive authority in a control board to deliver quick results without the extensive processes that often slow us down from making the right decisions in the absence of such a control board. The last point I'd make is people matter. The members of that control board will be essential, the leadership staff. We're fortunate to have a great set of folks in Springfield, and I think that's why the results were they were. Structure alone doesn't deliver it. The structure created the opportunity to take on a set of issues that had lingered for such a long period of time as to in many ways disable Springfield and turn a city in great woe into a city in great shape. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Secretary Ash.
Hi, my name is Jay Ash. I'm Secretary of Housing and Economic Development of the Commonwealth. I'm wearing 2 hats here today. Just briefly on the economic development side, we have an ecosystem here in Massachusetts that supports the economy of the Commonwealth, and unfortunately we all saw what happens when the ecosystem collapses. People can't get to work, our products can't get up and down the distribution chain, and ultimately consumers can't go out to consume. You all know, you all heard, you all saw how our business apparatus here in Massachusetts was disrupted as a result of the T. I'm not here though to talk as the Secretary of Housing and Economic Development. I'm here as another survivor, I will say, of a turnaround, as the former city manager of Chelsea, as a guy who saw Chelsea fall into collapse, lived through the period of time of recovery, and enjoyed tremendous growth and prosperity thereafter. To tell you that the problem that we have with fixing organizations is that oftentimes but bureaucracy outlasts the bureaucrat. And unless you have a change agent who is empowered to make a difference with a focus, with urgency, and demanding of results, it's impossible to get the change you need in the time that you need it. As Chris has said so eloquently about Springfield, I'd like to say about Chelsea. After Chelsea went into receivership, the first community since the Great Depression to fall into receivership, after 4 short years, Chelsea was a model of municipal management. We had 5 bond rating increases, we had record economic development, and 2 All-America City Awards that transpired after Chelsea was first pointed to as an example of what could go wrong in municipalities. I will tell you that none of that prosperity and everything that is going to follow would have been possible without having somebody who was at the helm, who was able to make change in a urgent fashion. So our experience has been that generational change could work, but none of us can afford to wait a generation for the potential to change. A fiscal control board will help to make sure that the MBTA can make the improvements necessary in short order to make sure that we continue to enjoy great prosperity here in Massachusetts, that we continue to get people back and forth to work, that we continue to get products to and from, and that we continue to conduct the commerce that all of you have talked to me about, and that we, in fact, want to make sure that happens. The ability to have full authority to make the change necessary is a central part to what a fiscal control board can do. Without it, you dilute the power, you dilute the impression that those who are prepared to collaborate on that change have, and as a result, we'll be back again worrying about the same old after storms or other dramatic failures that the team may have. So, my comment to you is one based upon experience. When you have a dysfunctional system, and when good people try often to try to change that dysfunctional system, it's time to try something different. This something different is well thought out, and it has been proven time and time again in places like Chelsea, in places like Springfield, in places like Lawrence, to be an effective way of changing an organization. And with that, I would say that the Chelsea experience and those experiences of other places are an excellent example of what can happen should you be able to adopt what the governor has proposed to you all. Thank you. I'm now going to turn it over to Mayor Joe Sullivan.
Thank you, Secretary.